Pruitt here, and welcome to the recap. This is the third episode that we have done, and the goal here is to kind of just talk about some of the articles that we have done recently, and we hope to do these a lot more frequently as time allows, and as we kind of continue to grow and have more time to do more of these episodes. But the goal of the recap is just to kind of go through some of the articles that we've done. Maybe give you guys some more details that didn't make it into the article, and then just have some discussion about the issues that we have written about. So we cover actual news stories on the recap, so we don't cover the op-eds. And for those that are unaware, the op-eds are opinion editorials, right? They are not news articles. So whenever you see an op-ed, understand that those op-eds are going to be biased, right? That's not the goal of a news article is to have no bias and to balance them out, where the op-eds are your guys' opinions and you submit those for approval from the Idaho Dispatch. And so we have no official endorsement. We make sure that the op-eds are clean and there's no violence and anything like that. But we allow people to express their opinion about any kind of particular political issue. So with that, it is December 18th, 2020, and this is the third episode of the recap. Be sure, if you're watching on Facebook, to like our page, and also be sure, if you're watching this on YouTube, to subscribe to our channel, or if you're watching on Facebook, be sure to go subscribe to the YouTube channel anyway. And then lastly, be sure to share this video with everybody you know on social media, through emails, and wherever else, so we can continue the growth of the recap show. And so let's kind of start off with a more recent article that we released. This was back on December 11th, and it was about the Pocatello High School Indians mascot change. And this is an issue that a number of schools have dealt with in the last few years. Earlier this year, I believe, Boise Braves changed their name to Boise Brave. The Preston Indians, I believe, had also looked at a name change that did not end up going through. And so Pocatello High School is one of the oldest high schools in the country, and the Indian name has been around for a really long time, and it was kind of after Chief Pocatello down in that area is what the city was named after, and that's kind of who they initially, I believe, went to when they got the Indian mascot approved. And so over the years, the Indian name has been brought up time and time again, and the individuals on the dance team would wear certain Native American apparel, and the quote-unquote mascot would wear Native American apparel and do a Native American dance. And there's been a lot of discussion over the years on whether it was appropriate or not appropriate, for somebody who was not Native American to be doing those things. And so earlier this year, back in September, the school board in Pocatello approved a name change. And Idaho Dispatch came into some the Idaho Dispatch came into some emails that were sent to us from a citizen down in Pocatello. And in these emails, the principal, Lisa Delonis, had basically said that she was they were planning this name change at least in August from the emails that we had received. And she said that she was trying to keep this from the public. And so she had sent this email, and I'm just going to read the email verbatim, to a number of staff members at Pocatello High School. And so it says, "Please read and give me any feedback you may have." And so let me cut in here real quick. There was a document attached to this email that she had sent out. Okay. "This has been really difficult, and I know it's history in the making. And again, this is before they've actually taken the vote. "I want to be absolutely certain that I am doing this the best way I can. Also, please keep this private. I don't want the public tipped off any sooner than they have to be. I have been asked to not speak about this." So this last part, we tried to reach out to Ms. Delonis, and we did get a message back, not from her, but from the school district's communications director, that did not answer a couple of questions that we had about why did she not want the public tipped off any sooner. Was she anticipating that the public would not support the concept of changing the name. And then we were trying to also figure out who asked her not to talk about it. She is the principal, and so we don't know if it was the school board or if it was somebody else in the community that had asked her not to talk about it. We have no idea, and she did not answer that question. And so there was a really big, long debate. And during the public school year, the teachers had and the principal had come up with a number of videos, I believe 2 videos, to tell people, this is why we need to change the name. And I mean people, I mean students, okay? So they were running these videos around the school. We tried to ask if those videos contain any counter messaging on why the Pocatello Indian name should be kept. And that was never, that was never answered in the questions that we had. We went on to kind of cover the school board meeting where the name was officially changed, and it was on September 15th. And you had faculty and staff who came out and supported that change, and then you had some mostly alumni, it seemed, from the testimony that we saw and from other information that we had gathered, that most of the people opposed to it were Pocatello alumni, Pocatello High School alumni. And another individual who was opposed was Chief Pocatello's great-granddaughter. And so she got up and testified. She kind of gave her lineage to show how she was related to Chief Pocatello, and said that she was there speaking on behalf of the elders of her tribe. And she said that they were opposed to the name change. And at the end of the meeting, the name got changed. And then on September 18th, Pocatello High School started asking for input on a new mascot. And they came up with a list of, I believe, 9 names. And let me see here: Phantoms, Bison, Eagles, Wolves, Mountain Lions, Mustangs, Falcons, Thunder, and Stampede. Okay, and so those were the 9 names that were initially chosen. And then out of that, the Phantoms were the top name that kind of went forward after they did some new voting. And the Bison was the second, and then the Thunder was the third. And the way that I believe Miss Delonis, the principal of Pocatello High School, had said that the Thunder mascot would still be a bison. Okay, so there was the bison, and they would be the Pocatello Bison and have a bison mascot, or they could be the Pocatello Thunder but use the bison as a mascot. And so that was kind of the imagery, I guess, would not change from the bison. And there was some discussion even then. There were some Native Americans who said that the bison was a very spiritual animal in their culture, and that using the bison would probably lead to problems down the road. And so ultimately, they ended up selecting the Pocatello Thunder. Okay, and we have not done an updated article about the name that has now been chosen, but Pocatello Thunder is now the new name. And there was some, after the vote had taken place, there were some additional emails that we had obtained and documents that show Miss Delonis had been really talking about the mascot being the bison sometime before there was ever a vote even on changing the name. And so she had given a presentation to, I believe, a couple of school board members as well as some individuals in the Native American community. And so at the end of this speech that she was giving, she says, finally, Pocatello High School would also like to propose a new mascot to be adopted. We have toiled over finding a mascot that would still represent the great history of the area and the role that Native Americans and their leaders have played in shaping our culture and traditions. A mascot that would still instill a sense of pride and a respect for the history of that great school. The mascot we would like to propose is the bison. Our research has told us that the word Pocatello has no meaning in the Shoshone language, but that is a word created by white men who joined Shoshone word roots in an attempt to describe I'm kind of reading it verbatim here, that was stealthy and did not follow the road. The chief referred to himself as, and I have no idea how to pronounce this word, Tondazosha, meaning buffalo robe. We hope that by becoming the bison, we can build a connection between our past and future. Bison are beautiful, powerful, majestic creatures. They symbolize strength and unity and are revered for their power and the good fortune they brought the tribes. We are confident the bison will bring Pocatello High School good fortune as well as we rededicate ourselves in strength and unity as a school, and we can say with confidence it's a place where everybody is somebody. Okay, so that is that is her entire speech, and it's kind of an interesting situation because the accusation was that the principal had already selected Bison as the name. Okay, so remember, there were 9 names initially, and I'm sorry, I'm trying to turn my phone down here. There were 9 names initially that were put out, and out of those 9 names, they narrowed it down to, I believe, 4. I believe Mountain Lions was the 4th one. So you had the Phantoms, you had the Bison, you had the Thunder, and then you had the Mountain Lions. And the interesting thing is the Mountain Lions came in last, and the Thunder, which is the name that was selected in the public case, this is a public survey that was done, and the Thunder came in third, and so they didn't end up selecting Bison or Phantoms, which were the top 2 choices. And so, I think there was some confusion from people on, well, wait a minute here, why did neither of the top 2 names get selected? And that's not a follow-up we have been able to do yet. Some people have asked about the Phantoms, and so just full disclosure, I am an alumni of Pocatello High School. Okay, I graduated from Pocatello High School in 2000, and Pocatello High School has this long history of being a haunted school, and so that's where the Phantom names came from, and why one of the mascots was the Phantoms is because of the haunting history of Pocatello High School that has been around for a really long time. Okay, so now it is the Pocatello Thunder, or June of 2021, it will become the Pocatello Thunder. There is a recall underway, and a number of the citizens are trying to recall the school board members, and part of the reason that they want to do that is because of this particular issue on top of some other issues we've been told, and we're kind of working on a recall article at this time. Okay? Mm-hmm. So now let's move on to I thought I silenced this all the way, and I apparently did not. I apologize. Let me get it into mute here. There we go. Let's talk about the next story that we had on December 15th, which was about the Central District Health Order. And so we have covered a number of these protests, and I think there's been 3 recently, and I did not. I went to one of them, and then ultimately came back and ended up just kind of watching the other protests from our office here because I had to get a bunch of other stuff done. But the protest that I went to, and so this is a different article than the one on December 15th. So the protest that I went to, which was a few days before this, we did not witness anything that was violent. The closest thing I guess you could say is that some people were burning masks in a metal pail that was in the parking lot. But we didn't witness any confrontations between protesters and counter-protesters. So there was people protesting CDH, and then there were counter-protesters who supported CDH, who were kind of off in their vehicles. And you can go back and watch the live stream of this, and I kind of pan around and show you everything that's happening. And those individuals just kind of stood there and held their signs. They had a whole bunch of signs, and then the protesters and counter-protesters, I never saw any arguments break out personally. Okay, that's not to say that it didn't happen, but I didn't witness it. And I didn't see anybody yelling at the police. There was somebody arrested, and we still don't know exactly when they were arrested because there's a barricade around the whole front of the building. And that barricade wasn't necessarily as secure when earlier in the day, and so we don't know if somebody was already inside before everybody got there and then got arrested. And they actually did a citizen's arrest. So I believe some staff members of CDH had basically initiated a citizen's arrest, and then the police, eventually came and took care of it. And so that kind of, possibly could be that they were already in the building long before the main protest had started. Once the main protest started, there was police all over the outside of the building, especially on the front, and then there was a huge barricade. So it would have been really difficult to jump the barricade, get past the police inside the building, and not have everybody realizing that all that commotion was happening. So, but again, as far as violence goes, there was no violence. The crowd had sung a prayer, had said a prayer and prayed for the police officers, and they sang the national anthem, and that was kind of the end of it. By the time the speakers got done, there was already the announcement that the meeting had been canceled, and nobody in the crowd at the time that I had talked to or was trying to ask me what was happening had any idea about the stuff that was happening at the homes of Diana Laciondo and David Epperly, Dr. David Epperly. And so we covered as much as we could. We reached out to one of the protesters who was outside of Commissioner Laciondo's home and asked them, hey, did anybody go on her property, or were they just blowing air horns and buckets outside of her property? And however you come down on protesting outside the home, there was a lot of confusion in the crowd. There was a lot of confusion in the media even, whether or not, because the way that Commissioner Laciondo had described it is they were banging outside the door, which I think a lot of people that I saw interpreted that as they're literally on her porch by the door making all of this noise. And so when we reviewed a video that was about 7 minutes and 40 seconds long, when we reviewed this video, we didn't see anybody on the property, but it's a short video, right? So it was possible after or before that video, somebody had gone on the property. And so I reached out to one of the protesters and said, hey, what happened? Did anybody go on the property? And that individual told me, no, nobody went on the property. There was only 3 people there. And later on, one of them was arrested for disturbing the peace. So then that kind of led to another question and something else that was happening. So that was when I was there. And then a few days later, they had another meeting, and it looked like a lot of the board members were broadcasting from home or an office location maybe somewhere. It did not look like the typical setup that they would have. And so they broadcast, and ultimately there was a vote of 3-3 on either passing or not passing a district-wide mask mandate. And the Central District Health covers Ada County, Boise County, Elmore County, and Valley County. And the Boise County Commissioner, who was on the board, as well as the Valley County Commissioner, who's on the board, both said that their constituents overwhelmingly did not want to do it, and so they were 2 of the no votes. And then Representative Megan Blanksma, who represents as a representative both Elmore and Owyhee counties, also said that the people she had talked to, nobody wanted a mask mandate, and they all kind of seemed to agree that the problem that was happening in Ada County they shouldn't be punished for what is happening in Ada County. So ultimately it died on a 3-3 vote. And then there was a lot of talk after about snipers on the roof. I started getting a lot of questions and a lot of pictures about, hey, there's snipers on the roof. And so people started asking about that, and they also started asking about, did the Boise Police Department do the same stuff during the Black Lives Matter events in the summertime, okay? And so on a personal level, I had some answers to this, and just based on my background and the experience I had at some of the BLM events, I had some answers. But, because you guys had asked and because you were wanting some follow-up questions from the Boise Police Department, I figured, hey, let's just ask, right? I'll let them answer the question. I have maybe my own views and opinions, and that's what we're trying to leave out of our news. So let me go out and find out from the Boise PD, and hopefully they'll answer. So that day I sent a message to their media team, and I know that at least one attorney had asked for a public records request of some of the information, the same information that we were looking for. And so we got that response from the Boise Police Department. It's kind of lengthy, so I don't want to read the entire thing right now. But basically they kind of said, well, yeah, we had some guys on the roof, and there's equipment that we don't show the public, right? There's stuff that they're not going to show the public. And so they didn't necessarily answer that question directly. And they also said that during the summer they had treated a lot of these large gatherings where I believe he said, they're emotionally charged and treated them the same. So at one of the events, in either June or July, I'd have to go back and try to remember. I did talk to some Boise Police Department individuals, because during one of the BLM events that I was covering, where there was BLM folks and then counter protesters, there were people on the roof and very similarly dressed, and so you knew that they were law enforcement. And I went over and talked to some of the officers. I said, "Hey, you guys got some of your guys up there on the top, overwatching everything?" And they said, "Yep." And they had some spotter scopes. They were taking pictures of some of the people in the crowd just in case that those were needed. That's what they told me. And so, at least from the experience that we have seen firsthand, Boise Police Department did have people on the roof watching the crowds during the BLM events and also during some of these events. So, and we didn't put this part in the article, but so there was the CDH meeting where the vote failed. Okay, that's the most recent one. The one before that, which was just a few days before that, is the one where we were on the ground, and the whole issue with protesting at people's homes happened. And about, I think, 2 or 3 days before that was another meeting for their first attempt. And at that one, we were not on the ground there, and we did not cover that one specifically. But there were some people who tried to push that kind of had shoved some officers trying to push their way into the building. And so, from what we have gathered, kind of behind the scenes and trying to talk to people, but nobody will go on the record, is that, part of the reason that, these emotionally charged events, as they describe them, and in that type of situation that those officers were in, has kind of led to a situation where they have more force there than they normally would. Again, no, these officers won't go on the record, and I'm just kind of describing what they have told me. But that's kind of what we have so far from those situations. So let's see here. I'm trying to see if there's any questions. If you guys have any questions, be sure to let me know. I know I missed one from Lisa Ray Ventures. I apologize. What about Army's Apache helicopter, Black Hawk, etc.? Yeah, I don't know. Maybe those will be changed. I know the Cleveland Indians, that's something we're not going to cover, but the Cleveland Indians are also, it looks like, changing their name. And so that's Major League Baseball team, for those that don't know. So, and we sent some follow-up questions to Boise PD, and again, they just don't provide some of that information. And specifically, we were asking, were the rifles just sitting on the ground and you just couldn't see them? And they said, we specifically said tools in the video because we are not providing that specific information, right? So they're not going to tell you kind of their setup. And just coming from a military background, there are things that you wouldn't say to, because if somebody knows your method of operation, they may be able to do something with that. And so that's probably why they're not going to provide that information to the public. Okay, and then kind of the last story for now, and hopefully we'll get in one more episode before Christmas time, is you had Governor Little and the Democrat leaders. Okay, so Governor Little and Michelle Stennett, who is the Senate Minority Leader, okay, Democrat, and Ilana Rubel, who is the House Minority Leader, okay, Democrat. And so the Democrats and Governor Little have all kind of urged the Republican legislature to, delay the session until April, or implement guidelines where masks would be required in the Capitol, and where social distancing would be required, and maybe they could have some plastic barriers and limitations on how many people are inside, all that kind of stuff. Okay, so some people have asked, and we didn't put this part in the article, but some people have asked, well, the Capitol is in Boise, and Boise has a mask mandate and social distancing and all that kind of stuff. Well, the Capitol's kind of exempt from all that stuff, and the Speaker of the House, Scott Bettke, and the Senate Pro Tem, Senator Chuck Winder, they get to make the rules of the Capitol. And so it's kind of exempt. So there's no requirement by them to have to follow the same rules that is under place for everywhere else in Boise. And so right now, we don't know exactly what they have done. Speaker Bettke has said that they have set up some stuff and they're working on some stuff. But I believe I saw him quoted in another news article where he said that they're not going to force people to wear masks inside the Capitol and do social distancing and stuff. So there's kind of some back and forth between the Republicans and the Democrats right now. In addition, both Senator Winder and Speaker Bedke said that the Idaho Constitution requires them to meet on a specific day in January. Okay, and the Idaho Code also talks about the legislative session, how it's to operate. And so what they're saying is, in order to even delay the session, they can't just both, right now agree to just delay it. They would have to go in and change the law. And so the only way to do that would be to meet, pass some sort of constitutional amendment, but then that has to go to the vote of the people. And so what they're essentially saying is there's no way to really do that. And now they could come in and there's a mandatory requirement that they pass a budget when they come into session. So they would have to pass a budget according to what the lawmakers we're talking to are saying, and then they could pass some other stuff and then just end their session and go home, right? So it could be a very short session if they wanted to do that. And so what some of the lawmakers are trying to say that want the delay is that, hey, the vaccine is rolling out. If we roll session all the way until April and just delay it until April, then a lot more people can be vaccinated and feel a lot more safe, because there was concerns about people, journalists and lobbyists and, disabled folks who would be going to the Capitol. And because there's no rules inside the Capitol, at least it doesn't look that way right now, for masking and social distancing, then, there's concerns about what they're doing inside the Capitol and what effect that may have on the coronavirus and people in close quarters and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of both sides of that issue. But as of now, on January 11th, the legislative session will start, and there are a number of lawmakers we have talked to that want to, talk about, changing the laws so that the legislature can call themselves back into session. There's discussion about stripping power from district health boards, and there's a lot of discussion about, being able to take back some of the power that the governor has, because a lot of frustration we have seen from citizens in the comments on our page is, where is the legislature? Why hasn't the legislature done anything? Well, and the way that Idaho's law has been interpreted is that the only person that can call the legislators back into session is the governor. And so our session typically goes from, sometime in January to sometime in late March and once in a while into April. And so it's relatively short. And once April is done, and so you got to remember the pandemic had just started to hit in March, right? And the governor's order, I believe, was March 23rd. And so they were all pretty much done with session kind of as the whole COVID thing was first coming into fruition, and nobody really knew much about it. So they ended the session. And then, a lot of the problems that we have heard from legislators and concerns that they had was all this money has been coming in and they've had no control over it. And the governor has essentially had unilateral control through the executive branch over all of the money. And so some of the legislators want to be able to call themselves back into session, especially for these types of emergencies, and have their say in what is happening and being able to represent you guys. Okay, that's what their argument is. And so the governor did call a special session, I believe, in August, but the way that the laws are written, the governor really essentially decides what you get to talk about during the special session. And that was, another heated discussion back in August when this was taking place, was, other legislators wanted to take that opportunity to kind of rein in the power, they said, from the governor, but they couldn't do that because the governor essentially sets the agenda for what happens during that special session. So it could be a very interesting legislative session in 2021. I'm going to do my best to be on the ground covering some stories, a lot of the big stories for you guys, and so I hope that you'll be able to kind of follow what we're doing. A lot of the stories that might come out during the session are going to be very short, right? There'll be 5 or 6 bills debated during that day, and I'm going to go into a meeting, hopefully a committee hearing, and just give you guys a real quick 4 or 5 line synopsis of what was proposed, and try to do some interviews about those bills and stuff. but hopefully give you guys as much information as we can, unbiased, and just let both sides, talk about both sides of a heated bill that is proposed, and let you guys decide whatever you want to believe from all of that. So, let's see. That will chairs and leadership sit on. So Tony Ulrich says, unless you happen to be little, then you just make laws even though you can't. How much of that will chairs and leadership sit on? So what Tony is kind of talking about, for those that aren't really familiar with the process, a chairman has control over essentially what is proposed in his committee. And there's around 11 committees, okay? Health and welfare, education, state affairs, and judicial and rules committees. And so those chairmen have a lot of power to, if there's a bill they don't like, they have the ability, if they want, to just, they call it drawing a bill and not hearing it. And so what Tony is asking is, how much of these ideas that I have been talking about that legislators want to do are going to end up in a drawer in a committee chairman's drawer. So we'll see. That's kind of hopefully some of the information we can track down for you guys during session. So I hope you guys appreciate everything that we're doing. Please be sure to like our page, subscribe to our channel. Again, we need a lot more monthly subscribers so that I can actually hire an editor or something like that. Would be fantastic. I'm not the best editor in the world. I try my best, but we'd love to continue to keep this growing. And again, our goal, if you guys see bias or something you think is bias, let us know. We may not agree, or we may agree to disagree at least. But our goal is always to keep bias out of our articles, to make sure we do everything we can to balance those articles out. And so if you guys have any concerns, please be sure to let me know. We'd love to, talk about those situations, and certainly we could do better and make the Idaho Dispatch continue to grow and be there for you guys. That's our goal. We're your ally in kind of keeping track what is happening within the government, and then just reporting the facts, right? Without all the hyperbole and all that kind of stuff. So thank you guys again for watching. Please be sure to share this. If I don't do another episode before Christmas, have a Merry Christmas, and you guys take care.